Good morning, Sally. Lovely to be with you again in this nearly the shortest day of the year, I believe.
That's exciting, isn't it? Yes, middle of June. Can you believe it? Holy hell, Harry. Woo, alliteration.
It's not exciting. It's what I call the death zone, where the temperature's getting colder and the days are getting shorter.
I know, but look, we've got the sunny skies. It's beautiful. I don't mind it when it's, sunny and beautiful.
Yeah.
It gets cold. Very crisp in the morning, but it's nice. It's refreshing. It's empowering.
So today,
Yes.
I'm going to show you a little thing.
Hey, Harry.
So today we're going to talk about the amygdala, which is a structure in the brain. It's in the limbic system.
Mm-hmm.
The limbic system is where emotions get lodged and managed and recognized. The amygdala is where you recognize and process negative feelings, dangers, threats. You register and generate fear, anxiety, sadness, depression, like that. Pretty complex.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about this topic because you've spoken of the amygdala before, and then I was listening to this 9-part webinar series, and it came up a bit, and I thought, the amygdala, I really should have a look into what it does and where it sits and all that sort of stuff. So it's just as you said, it processes all of those things, like particularly fear, and I really wanted to pick your brains about it. Hey?
I'm not sure it's particularly fear, but fear's there because it drives behaviour so powerfully.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really really interesting topic. First of all, I'm going to share my screen and just find a picture so that we can. If I can find. Here we go. So there's the picture of the amygdala. It's in the part of the brain called the limbic system, which is, it's not the frontal cortex. It's not the bit that you do your high levels or your constructive thinking with.
Yep.
It's in a part of the brain that we call mammalian. So it's very primitive. Well before, man learnt to stand up on 2 legs. And what you can see here is that if we see something that is really scary.
Ew, and I don't like snakes. Yep.
Some of these things are embedded in the DNA. So there's been experiments done on rats where they see a snake and they haven't learned that it's dangerous, but they just know it is. So they've inherited that. But for us, it's about learning, and I think mostly humans. So you see the snake, it registers. Now, what's really interesting is when you see a snake like this or something that you're scared of, it hits the limbic system and goes into the amygdala before it hits the frontal cortex.
Yep.
So this is before you're aware of it. And so the amygdala then takes over the body. When you go into this fright, panic response, you haven't had time to be aware of it.
Yep.
So that's what's really interesting about this, I think. And I'm going to read a chapter out of a book. This is out of one of my favourite books.
The Zebra
I'm going to stop the screen share now. It's Robert Sapolsky, Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers.
Mm-hmm.
So think about a woman who suffered a traumatic assault, and her brain has become conditioned to speed up her heart rate every time she sees a man that looks like the man that assaulted her.
Mm-hmm.
It's what we call a Pavlovian response.
Mm-hmm.
You show a dog a can of food and he starts salivating. Yep. That's fine. So let's say this woman finds herself in a crowded party and she hears somebody, she suddenly finds herself gasping, panicking, heart rate racing, and she hasn't a clue why. It just happened out of the blue. It's not until a few seconds later she realizes that the man talking behind her had the same accent, just like the man who assaulted her.
Wow.
So that's the important thing about the amygdala. It can take you over in a way that you don't understand and in a way that you can't manage because it bypasses the frontal cortex. So if we've got people with an adverse child experience, PTSD, chronic anxiety, this is something that's going to trip them up big time.
Yep.
And it interests me because it can undermine the ability of a child to learn.
Yep.
If they've had an adverse child experience, and that gets in the way of them socializing, feeling safe in the classroom, and so on.
Yeah, so the thing with the amygdala is that you have sort of an instant response before it then gets that time to process it in the frontal cortex, wherever it is, doesn't really matter. So it's sort of like the first stop is there, and then if you don't catch it, you sort of, it's like, I don't know, when you yell at someone and you shouldn't have done it, you know, you just haven't taken that time to stop and pause. It's just an instant reaction.
You can't catch it. That's the point. That's the point, Sally. You can't catch it because it doesn't go through. It hits the amygdala before it hits the part in the brain you can catch it.
Yeah.
So if I show you a snake, you get into bed and you see a snake, you pull the sheets open, you haven't got time to modify your response. You're just going to react because it's a survival strategy.
Yep.
You don't want time to think if there's a snake in your bed.
You can process it, no. And that's happened in Bali. Oh my God, I was in there and a girlfriend had a snake in the bed. Oh, how gross. And then another friend got bitten on the toes and didn't realise that during the sleep had been bitten on their toes. Oh, horrible. Yeah, so because I was, looking into it a bit, and back in the 30s, they were experimenting on the monkeys and taking the amygdala out and finding that, they weren't having that, the fear response, the fight or flight response, that adrenaline response was gone. And I like how it's, I've got forming memories that are associated with, as you were explaining about that lady, fear-inducing events. So like the assault. And so you've got those memories in there, held in there. So, yeah, I think that's really interesting, particularly with kids when they've got the PTSD or got the anxiety, and it just gets triggered from, the voice, or it might be words, or it might be whatever, a vision or something like that. So,
It can be a colour. There's been some studies that show if a child was abused in a bedroom that was painted in a certain colour.
Yeah.
If it's early enough, they will never like that colour, but they won't know why. Because you can lay down, there's a stage in development where you can lay down memories, but you can't yet access them. And so if the adverse experience happens early enough, you won't, I hate green, I hate blue, I hate whatever it is.
Yep.
Really interesting. So the amygdala manages your response subconsciously. And it'll manage your muscles and your facial expression and everything else. So when you pull back the covers in your bed, Sal, and there's a snake there, you're not managing your response consciously.
No, it's just a subconscious response. Yeah, absolutely. I get that. I suppose it's with all senses too. Smells would trigger as well, I suppose, as well as visual.
Smell very powerfully, and interestingly, the smell goes straight into the limbic system. It doesn't, particularly smell. But interestingly, I did a bit of research on this. If you have traumatic memories, they tend to be stored in, I have to read this, eidetic form. So that means they're stored as images.
Right.
And if the event is traumatic enough, they're often locked away. And they're inaccessible, so that it's there, but you can't easily access it. So with, for instance, I've got a client at the moment. She's 21. She's absolutely beautiful. I look forward to her sessions. But she's always saying sorry. Simple. Sorry.
Yep.
So I start this game, first one I put one finger up. Second time I put 2, 3, 4, 5. We get up to 5 or 6. We're both laughing. But the reason I'm making a joke about it is to raise her awareness of it. Because it doesn't make sense when she's saying sorry most of the time. So she's not making mistakes. There's nothing to apologise about. So I asked her yesterday, I said, why are you saying sorry? She said, I don't know. I said, come on, dig a bit deeper. Why are you saying sorry? And she said, oh, because I'm always mucking up. So she'd been told that. It was a script. It was embodied deep.
Yep.
But that's the sort of stuff that the limbic system can do. It can generate your behaviour.
Yeah.
So if you want to read up about this, the guy that really popularised awareness of the limbic system was a professor of science at New York University called Joseph Ledoux, Ledaux. And he wrote a book called The Emotional Brain. And a lot of this, almost anything that you see written about the amygdala will reference him if it's any good.
Yep.
So the picture I showed you before comes out of one of my favourite books from one of my favourite authors. It's a scientific journalist called Rita Carter, and she wrote this lovely book called Mapping the Mind.
Yep.
And why I like it is because it presents the structures in the brain in a visual way, which makes it accessible.
Looks like the tube.
So she's drawn the brain linkages like an underground map.
Cool.
So, yeah, Rita Carter. She's written quite a few good books. So, yeah, really interesting.
Yeah, well, what I love about it is that it's tapping into a lot of subconscious stuff, old subconscious behaviour patterns, or, as you said, limiting beliefs and things like that are just tucked away in the subconscious, and it's just triggering it. It's and it's bringing it up, linking it into smells, sight, whatever it is, touch even. Yeah, it's really cool.
Yep. The other interesting thing is that the amygdala is pretty much complete at birth.
Right, okay.
Now, why is this important? It's important because when we rear children, the emotional container that we rear them in is super important. And the proposal is the amygdala is complete at birth because it's an important survival mechanism.
Right.
And we know that you talked about, responding when you're faced with a threat. And why bringing up a child with love and with touch, with a sense of belonging is important is because if children are denied their full quota of this, they get an underdeveloped frontal cortex, which is the part of the brain here that allows you to, to be essentially human.
Yep.
And one of the main functions of the brain is not to allow, it's to inhibit.
Right.
So if you're in a social situation where you don't like the look of somebody or you don't like their smell, it allows you to inhibit that response so that you disguise that and don't upset the person who you don't like the look of or you don't like their smell.
Yeah, it provides a filter, right?
Really important. And so, the frontal cortex development allows you to inhibit and to socially control and to master the mammalian brain.
Yeah.
To master the amygdala. So that's really important. And that's why early childhood deprivation is so destructive.
Imagine a childhood without any love and no kisses and cuddles. This would be so
Well,
sad.
we know from the Romanian orphan example, have you heard about that?
Oh, remind me again, that's a long time. Yeah.
In Romania, they put children in orphanages at quite high rates and underfunded their care. And so the children who were closest to the door ended up most normal because they had the most interaction with their carers. Right. And the children furthest from the door were the most delayed and the most disrupted because they had less touch and they had less interaction.
So sad.
Yeah. So really interesting. So emotions, the amygdala is important and the limbic system is important because emotions tell us what's important. not the brain.
Yeah, but
not the frontal cortex.
yeah, and what I really like is that a lot of that is tucked away in your subconscious. It's just been there for such a long time. You don't even think about it. It's just an automatic response to something that you've seen, felt, touched, whatever it is. Yeah. Wow. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Really interesting. And if you look at the structure of the amygdala, it has many more outgoing nerve fibers than incoming nerve fibers. So it's much more, it's two-way, but it's much more of a control center than it is a response center.
Right.
So when we're surprised by stuff that, has a negative emotion,
Yeah.
the amygdala is more likely to control us than us to control.
Yeah. Do you have any phobias about snakes? Because it's probably the only thing I really can't handle with snakes.
Not really. I think they're very beautiful, and if you touch them like a python, they're stunningly beautiful. The way their muscles ripple. Teresa was telling me the other day that she's been looking after echidnas.
Oh, really cute.
And they can point. They have muscle control over their spines, so they can stick them into you if they don't like what you're doing.
Was that right?
I didn't know. Yeah, phenomenal. Wow. Anyway, nothing to do with the amygdala. Snake. I know somebody who got into a sleeping bag and there was a snake at the bottom.
Oh.
And they discovered it after they'd done the zip up. Can you imagine?
Oh, no. I spend a lot of time up in Noosa and I do that walk from Sunshine Beach around, and whoa, the number of snakes I've seen there, and not just those big long brown things, but those big things that, what did you call them? Python snakes. Would that be what that is? They're really big and fat.
Yeah. So they're not going to threaten you unless they, strangle you.
I'm already just feeling sick, Carrie. I don't know why they frighten me so much.
Feeling hot, feeling temperature's gone up.
Yeah.
Heart rate's gone up.
Yeah. Increased breathing, heart rate, all that. Hot flush. No, they're just it's like even like, honestly, the lady in the shop, she said, I can't even touch that. Can you just like not put it on the counter? And I'm just like, yeah, it's not my thing. But
After you bought it, Sally, were you tempted to bring it up really quickly? Give it desensitization therapy.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, really important little piece. So almond-shaped massive grey matter inside each cerebral hemisphere. So as you said, it's not huge. It's just a little thing, just tucked right in there, hidden away. But very important, and to explain why we behave how we do. Because
and you talked about smells. You can certainly have embedded emotional reactions to food that were associated with a traumatic episode.
Yeah, just like my ex-husband, he was in boarding school, and just the look of spam, the smell of spam, and he'll vomit because they were fed spam so much that he can't. Nothing to do with spam. I'm like, who would eat that stuff?
And it's where I saw large amounts of spam. That was when I was with you in Hawaii.
Really? Did we have spam over there?
You remember that? You remember that last day where we got that awesome fish dish in the like the little shop in the suburb?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yep.
There were rows and rows of cans of spam in that store.
That's right. There was. Like, who would eat that? Because we were eating all the raw fish. I can't remember what sort it was, and it was beautiful. That was poke bowls. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Was it $8 for two of us, as I remember? A big bowl. That was the best meal I had in Hawaii.
Yeah. All right. The Japanese was fun when we had Kate's birthday.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God, yes. Yeah, that was fun. Well, I've got something interesting. And now think about this Black Lives Matter event that's going on at the moment.
Hashtag, BLM.
Think about what's driving the cops to shoot
Mm.
the, you know, the African Americans.
Yeah.
And I can pretty much guarantee they're being driven by their amygdalas.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they're not thinking, right? It's an automatic response that just.
Yeah, there's some. Sapolsky talked about some interesting research where people were flashed up photos of racial stereotypes that were different to them. So if you're white, blacks, if you're Asian, you know, black face or a white face, and there was a pattern of a negative response to racial types that were different to you. Very interesting.
Mm. So here's a question for you. So, you know, I have issues with the youngest one not listening to me, and it's just an instant response of no and doesn't even think why. Is that an amygdalan response of like anytime there's a request, it's just a learned pattern response of like no without even thinking about it anymore?
It's definitely an automated response, and probably would have been built really early.
Yes, unfortunately.
None of us are perfect parents, myself included.
We're perfectly imperfect. Yeah.
So maybe you could take him out one-on-one, make the space, and just set that response up in a really cozy way, so that he says it but isn't threatened by it. And then say, now, do you know why you said that? Yeah.
Get some conscious awareness about it, like bring it up to...
Encourage him to dig a little deeper. And he may not be able to. Often there's not much self-awareness at that age, but you could try it. But it would have to be safe. It would have to be one-on-one. And does he only do it with you, or does it with others? Yeah. Well, I mean, you can play tricks with him, you know, suggest something that is in his best interest, and then he says no. It's a bit like, you know, you can play little games with young children and say, you know, trick them into saying yes, they're a girl when they're a boy, and vice versa.
Yeah, yeah. And so, you know, change the subject a little bit, but the same thing on the stove when you know, you don't touch because you know you're going to get burnt. Is that part of the amygdala thing as well?
No,
that's different.
No. That is a direct sensory response. You've got heat sensors in your fingers.
Yep.
And it doesn't go anywhere near it's done in, I think, in the spine. You know, there's a loop back through the spine to the motor, and if you get enough heat on the hand, you'll just withdraw. It's an instinctive motor response.
Yes. Oh, yeah, yeah. But actually not touching because you know what the response would be?
Well, that's just a learned avoidance, I guess.
Right. Yeah.
Like I was thinking the other day, you know, idle thought along this vein. You're driving along, we drive on the left here. Driving on the left-hand side of the dotted line. There's a car coming towards me at 100. I'm going towards them at 100. What would happen if we cross the line, you know? Well, I know in my head that there's going to be some serious deformation, but it's interesting, yeah. I don't do it because my head says it'll be okay.
Yeah, well, it only happens now and again, doesn't it? It's like when you go to the States and you're driving on the wrong way and you go around the roundabout the wrong way. I've done that a few times. I was like, oh, to be back in Hawaii again. Hey, Harry.
Yeah, it was very interesting. But, you know, I suspect the spam is there because there's a really disadvantaged subculture of native Hawaiians who've been displaced by rich immigrants and marginalised.
It's a spiritual place, isn't it, Hawaii?
Yeah. Yep.
Different vibe.
Yeah.
Anyway.
That's good. I think we're going off topic.
I could chat to you all day. Oh, thank you so much for informing me more about the amygdala, because I did want to know a bit more about it. It's, yeah, makes sense. I really love that, you know, all this subconscious stuff, it's in there. That's why we just instantly respond without even thinking, turning your brain off.
Yeah. And phobias are another thing, you know, it's stuff beyond conscious control. But that's why adverse child experiences are such a big part of my work, because they're so powerfully constraining.
Yep. Yep.
I mean, just on a simple level, there's a thing called the startle reflex.
Yep.
If you go like that, a baby will, the whole body will shock. And that response should be inhibited a little later on.
Yep.
In some it's not inhibited. So, for instance, if they're say an artist later in life, and a door slams, and they're 95% through this beautiful pen drawing, the pen's going to slip and waver, and they've wrecked the drawing just because the door slammed, because they haven't inhibited that primitive reflex. Yeah. Just by the by, nothing to do with the amygdala.
You and these knees, honestly. But all that past trauma growing up, I mean, goodness me. It's amazing that we're still sane in this day and age.
Well, yeah, spam and boarding school. My goodness.
But you went to boarding school, didn't you?
I did, and I even chose to go to boarding school when we came here, but not a good choice. Would not recommend it.
Didn't you do timber top?
I did. That's why I chose to go back. That's why I chose to come. But not the whole package wasn't worth it for me. I think separation from mother and family is really not a good idea unless the school can provide the same level of love and care. Yeah,
there's a lot to be said for that. That nurturing. Absolutely, when you're particularly at primary school, secondary school, kids are stepping into their own. But from particularly up to the age 7, 10, really needing those kisses and cuddles that you just, they're just there.
But even during teenage years, I mean, it's a very hard period to navigate, and Timber Top was developed to get kids out into the bush and away from the academics while they mastered their hormones, but you still lose connection with family. I'm not convinced, that the risk-reward ratio is worth it.
You're definitely spot on about teenagers. I've got 4 of them, and they secretly love it when I come up and give them a big cuddle and big kisses, and stroke their face or their hair or whatever. They can't do that in public, of course, Mum. Like, that's embarrassing, but I know. You just know the signs when they like it and when they don't.
Exactly.
Well, on that note, Harry, thank you very much for informing me more about the amygdala, and
Perfect.
Love learning from you.
Good. We'll learn from each other, Sally.
All right, well, keep on smiling. Stay warm.
Yes.
And I'm joining you on Thursday, aren't I? I'm very excited about that.
Yes. Good. Look forward to it. So I'll see you next week, Sal.
Okay, see you later. Bye.
I sent you the link. Which time are you coming? 10 o'clock?
Yeah, is that so I thought it said 9:45 to 11:30.
Yeah, 9:45 is 10 o'clock. That's when I usually rock up. But if you're rocking up at 9:45,
and so basically you just go around the room and everybody introduces themselves. Is that it?
Yeah.
And so then you just sit back and just sort of listen to everyone, and you have a few keynote speakers or whatever.
2 keynote speakers, and there's one knowledge talk. Yeah.
Hang on.
Very professional. It's very